the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. I saw your stuff a few months ago on TikTok. I mean, this is what I do, right? So I'm always, my fingers on the pulse of the storytelling world. I hadn't seen you before, and you popped up on my For You page. I was like, who is this? Who's like nailing it? And I was just immediately loving what you were saying. And what interests me about those, like in our space, if you will, is that all of us have different paths to like
Hmm.
what landed us there. So let's start there from the beginning, if you will, of like what brought you to the story space, to the story world.
Perfect. Okay, so I have a I don't want to
Love
say like long story, but you know, it's been a journey.
it. Yeah.
It's definitely been a journey. So I started out when I was 18 years old. I was actually recruited into the MLM space. So it kind of happened, and like unbeknownst to my knowledge, I was entering that space because, almost 10 years ago, it wasn't really like, hey, this is MLM. Like it was kind of shifting to like social selling is what they got me into, right? Um, and I was broke college student, sold the dream, right? I got in, and basically all of a sudden they were like, hey, so you're going to be needing to sell, $5,000 product a month and blah 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 blah. And it was just all of a sudden I was in this world that I had no idea what it was. I was just kind of
Mhm.
thrown into it, as many people are. I was, 18, very naive to the entire marketing culture of it. And I ended up really hating everything that I had been taught, right? I was 18 years old, sitting on my laptop for 8 hours a day, cold messaging. Like it was just, I was going to school trying to become a nursing student. It was like this whole thing where I just had no idea what I was doing and just doing things that I had been told to do. So, I spent a year cold messaging people and marketing that just made me very uncomfortable. And it was in the health and wellness space, and I was 18 years old. Like I didn't know anything. And so when I was trying to market myself, um, it was coming from a place of I had no experience with any of these products because I couldn't afford the products to buy. And so it
Mhm.
turned into this like whole like this is not for me. Like I need to leave this space. But I had learned a lot about, content, and I found my love of writing through that space. And I love to write, and I love to share my experiences, and I love to, just really connect with people. Throughout that time, I had gotten two associate's degrees, but I had been trying to get into nursing school. And, after 3 years of being waitlisted, I decided that that path was no longer for me, but I was working in a nursing home at the time. And I was like, I think I'm going to teach people how to write. I love to write. I had been blogging for a couple of years. And it wasn't even necessarily like I want to teach people how to write. It was like I want to just share my love of writing through my story and see what happens. And that's how it kind of developed. And so that was at the end of 2019. And then COVID happened.
Mhm.
And I was working in a nursing home, and it was kind of insanity
I can
at the
imagine.
beginning of COVID, and every day was uncertain. And I mean, I know me and my coworkers, we couldn't go out to the store, we couldn't do anything because we couldn't risk getting ourselves sick. And, our worst fear was going in and giving one of our residents COVID and then all of them dying. Like that was just our fear, like every single day, right? And so I was like, I need a way out. Like, I can't live this life anymore. My husband, who was my fiance at the time, was also going to college. he had gotten a job. Gosh, this was again 2 months before he was graduating college. He got a job, got laid off because COVID literally happened the next week. So we were like, we don't know what to do. And we decided to, we were living 5 hours up north from our family. And we're like, let's just pack everything and leave and go home because I can't work in the nursing home anymore. You don't have a job. Like, this is just crazy, right? So during COVID and working in the nursing home, I was like, I just really need to go all in with my writing and, sharing my love of content creation and what I had learned and what got me to that point. And so I created a business that wrote content for other people. I was kind of behind the scenes writing their content. And I ended up leaving the nursing home job about 5 months after COVID started, so July. And we came back home. My business was doing fantastic. I was just, people were telling me their stories. I was writing their content for them. But again, this was 2020.
How are you marketing at that time?
Facebook. So Facebook was my big key marketer. I loved Facebook. I had started a Facebook group.
Those were popping off at that time.
They were.
Yeah.
And and I always say, I grew it to 400 people. And to me back then, that was a big number. That was a huge number, right? And that community was like so committed to, learning. And I always just say, like, Facebook group is a gold mine, because if you can get people that really truly connect to who you are, they want, what you're sharing, and people go into a Facebook group because they want to learn.
Yeah.
Right. So they're willing to do the work. Gosh, and back then I had 400 people in a Facebook group making $10,000-$15,000 a month writing content for people. Like, it was just crazy back then. Fast forward, a couple months, me and my husband got married. September, middle of COVID. 3 more months, I got pregnant. I took a whole year off. I just had a very bad pregnancy, very bad maternity, postpartum anxiety. Like, it was all this. I couldn't do it anymore. But about 7 months pregnant, I was still posting in my Facebook group. And I woke up one morning and someone had hacked my Facebook and subsequently deleted my Facebook group. So everything was gone. Everything that I had worked for the past 2 years, building that community. At the time, no one really talked about, cross-posting and like email lists. This was 2020, right? And so you just put all your eggs in one basket and you never think that it's going to blow up in your face, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of took that as my sign to back off. That was when I, kind of, I don't want to say left my business, but I went on maternity leave. I didn't come back until my daughter was about 4 months old. But I had put so much work into growing a Facebook group for the past 2 years that I just couldn't do it. I could not grow it again. And gosh, I had 100 people on an email list. So it wasn't like I had this huge community, right? But I went over to Instagram and I started, teaching what I knew about content. I'd been writing people's content for the past 2 years at that point. And so I was, teaching people how to write content. And on Instagram, it's very different, right? Instagram, long form captions, aesthetically pleasing pictures and videos and, brand photo shoots. And I just could not be that person. Especially right after having a baby, having to just show up and pretend to be someone I wasn't. I was like, oh my gosh, this is not me. So after like 8 months of trying to make it work on Instagram, it just was not happening. And I had fought TikToks for so long.
Didn't we all?
And I fought it because I was like, I can't create video content. I don't want to be on video. I just want to write, right? But then I was like, you know what? I need to get on TikTok. I got on TikTok about September 2022. And I had finally, I like sat down and I was like, why did my writing style work? So I could figure out how to transfer that into video style, because I knew that was the only way I was going to make it work. Like I needed strategy. I couldn't just get on video and talk. You know, the way I had been writing, there was strategy to it. There was like psychology. There was everything that I had fought against TikTok for so long, because I felt like it was just random. Like I'm going to sit down and I'm going to record a video, and I would ramble, ADHD. Like I can't just do it like that. So then when I got into TikTok, I started using my strategy to create the videos as I was writing the content, and it started to work. And then people were like, oh, what are you doing? Like, how are you transferring this storytelling aspect written into video? That's when I started teaching it. So it has been a long journey to get
Yeah.
here, but that is me.
That was such a great summary of well, a decade of your life. I have so many questions. So many different ways I could take this right now, and I've been jotting notes the whole time. I love the MLM thing because you learn just as much about what not to do as what to do. The thing that I wrote, like already before we even had this conversation, was about building community. That's what's so clear about how you use storytelling so effectively. And now we see where it came from, because, hey, network marketing, MLM, if you don't have a community, you don't sell anything, right? So that's at least one thing we know that they do well. And without us, naming any names or throwing, them under the table, like I have also seen the inside of MLM businesses and kind of been a part of them. Not like you were. It almost seems like you were. Well, at least you feel kind of taken advantage of. You're at a young age and you were having
Yeah.
to sell things that you probably didn't understand. I spent some time with one that I was like filming for them a few years ago, but I was also kind of part of it because it was in the fitness space, yada, yada, yada. So I know like the goods and bads. I won't paint it like it's all bad, but it's some things are questionable, but I think that's life, right? And I love that you took the positive aspects of what you learned there and even indirectly use it to to build what you have now. I also want to just take a moment to say, you talked about, I had 400 people in the Facebook group, and even though that sounds like not a big number, when you have a TikTok following like you have now, I think it's important for people to realize that, like, we often do this to ourselves. The story we tell ourselves, right, is like it's only 400 people. But if you put 400 people in a room and you were the only person on stage and they were there for an hour or an 8-hour workshop to listen to you, that is huge. That is so powerful. And in having 400 people that choose to accept an invitation to a group to be, I mean, that's big. And I think that it illustrates, that people should hear that, because often we do the opposite. We're like, oh, I've only got 1,000 followers. Yeah, well, you can leverage the crap out of that if you understand how to serve those people. It's not all about the numbers. And conversely, I know people with millions of followers that don't know how to monetize that. So I just think that's a good kind of like side point to make. But you landed us really well, kind of where I wanted to go with this. I really love this concept of breaking down what worked for your writing and translating it for the screen, even the small screen. Quick question, were you always a writer? Like as a kid, did you write stories and things?
I have loved to write. There's an app called Wattpad when I was like 13, 14, and I would write little short story, like fiction novels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've loved to write. I just feel like I'm a rambler at heart, so as much as I can write, I even tell like my email list, hey, don't get on this email list if you like don't want to read a blog, because it's the only place. Like I'm gonna write.
I'm going to do what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
I got things to say.
Mhm.
No, I love that. That's good. That's good to do. Like, don't sign up for this
Yeah.
if you want 4 words and a
Mhm.
tip of the day. All right, because we're going to talk about some things. So, when you're a rambler and you got a lot to say, what is like? How do you structure that in a short form video format? Granted, TikTok allows up to 10 minutes now, but most of your content is not exploring that, right? It's
Mm-mm.
short, it's to the point. And you've told us you've gone through the process of, breaking down your writing and applying that structure to your story. So, what is the best format for someone in that short form video medium?
So I think before we even think, and I have this conversation all the time, before we even think about, you know, how to break up your content in a way that's digestible. I think a lot of people's issues with that is one, they feel like their content is too complicated. Like, no, I have to explain this. I have to tell my audience, A to B to C because they won't understand it if I don't. And, or they just don't know how to break it up in a way that will make sense for their audience. And I always say, your audience is not dumb. Your audience is smart, for one. They understand the content because I look at my content again as if I'm creating for this private group. So if they're watching your content, they understand what you are trying to say, and they don't need the full on, lengthy, long, drawn out, explanation, education, value every single time because they understand it, because they've been around you long enough, because they watch your content, because they're a part of your community, right? So before we can even get into how to break that content up, you have to go in with the mindset of, okay, I just have to give them this one little tiny piece of information to get them to whatever the end goal is for that video. And again, asking yourself, is this really needed? Do they really need this extra piece of information? Because if it isn't, then we're just stuffing things in a video to make, at that point it's for ourselves, right? Okay, how do we seem more valuable? How do we explain ourselves well enough so people understand us? And again, it goes back to people understand what you're trying to say. Just break that information up so that it's valuable to them. And for me, I'm like, give everything away in your audience. Anyone can come to my page and watch every single video and completely understand what I'm trying to say and go implement it for themselves, without having to ever spend any money. And that I truly create it like that because I just want my content to do that. So in order for it to do that, it has to be digestible. And so the structure for me kind of goes like, I'm always thinking of end goal. So what am I doing with this video? And a lot of people have discomfort around selling or, doing anything that involves sales. I look at my content like a business. So I have to market myself. I have to market my business, right? But sales to me is also asking my followers anything, giving anything or expecting anything of my followers is a sale. So telling them to follow me, that's selling to them. Asking them to leave a comment is selling to them. Asking them to save or share, that's just as important as, hey, go download this freebie. Hey, go buy this offer, right? So end goal, and then I kind of work my way backwards. I think of one problem that I'm trying to solve. Or really, one thing that they're struggling with, a transformation that they want, anything that they know that they're dealing with in this moment. So whether that's, they're looking for a transformation, they desire something, okay, well, what are they struggling with in order to get there, right? So then it's kind of working itself backwards again. And if I have a struggle or if I have this pain point or desire, whatever that looks like, then I work myself backwards and I say, okay, what did I struggle with that I know that they're going to be able to relate to, that they can form that connection to, or what is a result or a transformation that I have that I know they want. So immediately my hook, just like you would write it, it's forming that connection. So if I'm talking to a struggle, I'm immediately gaining that relatability and connection. They're able to put themselves in my shoes because I'm coming from a place of hey, let's talk about my struggles, right? And I feel like that's not, like, we don't do enough of that in this online space. It's just like, if you're struggling with blah, 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 do this to fix it. Or if you're struggling with blah, 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 you're making this mistake, go fix it. Right. And it's like, I want my audience to know, like, no, I
Yeah.
was in that same position. I struggled too. Like, let me show you how I walked myself through it.
That's such a
You
good
can learn
point.
that.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you hear that only say you, only say you. And I get it. There's some truth to that, but this is such a great example of the opposite being true. I think and you're creating that empathy too, that understanding
Hmm.
and that trust. So that's such a great point.
And a lot of people think that, you know, they can't use themselves in their marketing, and I hear that all the time. Everyone in my
Yeah.
comment section, well, I've only heard only use you, only use you. And I think, again, there's a time and place for that. Um, but I think if I like sit down with myself and I'm like, well, what has got me this far? What has, because I still have clients that I work with today that I've been working with since 2019.
Hmm.
Like, what has truly got me that far? And it's the fact that I put myself into all of my content. Like, my audience understands who I am. They understand, what I've been. They're watching my journey as it happens. And I feel like a lot of people are not like scared to do that, but they don't necessarily think it's right because they've
Hmm.
only been told one way how to market, right?
Yes, and that's it. I mean, they people subscribe so wholeheartedly to advice that's out there instead of, okay, look at it, glean some wisdom from it, but people don't put enough attention on like how you're supposed to do it, right? Like it takes all kinds. We're all different, and I think I really get frustrated at that when it's like, look, team, if we're all out here following the same exact model and the same exact formula and doing the
Mhm.
same exact best practices, well, all of our content is going to look and sound the exact same. And that's not
Mhm.
going to help anybody. Like yours, we're both storytellers and help people with stories. We should absolutely do that in different ways because we're different
Mhm.
people. And if we don't clearly have
Exactly.
that identified, we're in trouble.
Right?
You know? What 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 are- what are other things that frustrate you that people commonly get wrong, mistakes that they make about sharing their story with their followers?
Oh, the first one that's coming up, like, I get this message like at least once a day, and it's, you know, either my story's too complicated,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't want to sit down in front of a camera and talk about my trauma, or, I have been through so much, I don't even know where to start. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's like my niche, and having a niche really saved my business. And how I view my niche is like, my niche is my story. So anything that I have gone through that I can share wisdom of, inspiration, motivation, struggles, whatever, in terms of what I'm trying to get my audience to, or the community I'm trying to create, is fine. But you have every right to leave out whatever you don't want to include, right? Like, the crazy thing is, like, no matter how many people tell me, I don't want to sit down and talk about my trauma, I'm like, you don't have to. Like, unless you are specifically trying to help other people that have gone through that same trauma that you've been through, then you don't have to tell that part. Like, my social media, I don't include my daughter. I don't include my husband. I don't include, you know, personal things. I don't really share the behind the scenes of my life. I don't do a lot of things that people think that storytelling means, or that, I have to sit down in front of the camera and talk about my trauma and be vulnerable. And it's like, again, I think it's because I come from the mindset of, I'm creating as if I were, if it's written, right? So I just don't share what I'm not comfortable with. And a lot of people, again, you have free range. It's your social media account. Don't, like, the internet is forever. I say that all the time. The internet is forever. So please do not share something that you don't feel comfortable with. If you don't want it to be out forever,
And
possibly go
resurface.
viral. Like, like it's scary,
Yeah, it's a
what
good
people
point.
are willing to put on the internet just
Oof.
because they think they have to.
Hmm. That's deep. That's a whole nother
That's a
conversation.
conversation.
But it's so right. It's so right. You don't have to. And I'm thinking of, because like the first piece that I wrote a piece that was semi controversial for the Huffington Post some years ago that that was very personal, but I stand by it, and they republish it every every 6 months or every couple years, and I'll get some messages. Most 90% of it's all positive. But yeah, you have to be willing to understand that that may come back, and if you're
Hmm.
doing something that's not aligned with your values or your brand or your story, yeah, you don't have to. I do hear that question a lot too about oversharing.
Hmm.
You absolutely don't have to. You know.
But I think that also brings up the idea of just being like overly in this space, like you
Hmm.
said, watching a ton of people's content and just doing the things that
Yeah.
the way that they do. And it's like a lot of people also create content based on emotional triggers that they're feeling,
Yes.
right? So you have to be willing to have, I don't want to like use the word emotional intelligence, but like just have the ability to go deep within yourself too. Even when it comes to storytelling, right? Because we're all just telling things based off of our experiences and our opinions, um, and doing that from a place of, am I feeling like emotionally triggered right now? Like, is someone else triggering me, and I have to go and I have to create content and I have to talk about this because it needs to be out there? Or, right, can we create content from a healed space
Hmm.
and create content and talk about your story as if you're healed, right? Not telling stories based off of an open wound, right? Because I don't feel like we have the availability, like emotionally, to
Yeah,
do
or the
that.
perspective, right? I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but when after the resolution of the story, there's the lesson learned, right? The moral of the
Hmm.
story. And if you're in the middle of Act Two
Exactly.
and everything is terrible, you haven't reached that revelation yet. So, yeah, absolutely. You
Hmm.
don't have the perspective to share on that. You're still drowning, trying not to drown, at least.
Hmm.
Can we zero in a little bit more on, you talked about your niche and that really helping elevate your business when you got
Mm.
clear on that, and you said something, I'm paraphrasing, you said something along the lines of like, it's people I can specifically help through the events of my journey. And it seemed like you had a moment where you probably were like, which of these audiences like are mine? How do I target them specifically? Can you talk to me a little bit more about that concept of like, is it someone who's going through exactly what you've been through? I'm a documentary filmmaker by trade. Like, if we were to use me as a workshop, would I, in that model or that approach, would it be looking for filmmakers who are on their
What do you
path,
mean?
or you know what I mean? Like, just flesh that out a little bit more for me, because I think it's really important for people to understand like what that means.
Yeah, so I think I had a kind of revelation when I realized that I don't jive with the idea of an ideal client, because in MLM we were taught, sit down, write out someone who's your ideal client. What's
Hmm.
their age? What's like, how much money are they making? Do
Yeah.
they have a family? And so like I had been in that mindset for so long that it really screwed me over, because I was trying to just talk to like this one person. And like 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, because it's messing with my own head in terms of like, right when you're writing something and you're like, oh wait, am I talking to the right person? Am I actually writing the right thing? Is this what's going to call them in? Is this what they need to hear? And it just totally screws up, the creativity like process, right? So I was like, my ideal client is me, and not me who I am, not mother with a kid, entrepreneur. My ideal client is someone who has struggled with the same things that I've struggled with, that want the same things that I want. And I think because I've put so much emphasis on the struggle and the transformation and not the, who I am on the outside. It's allowed me to work with so many people and help them tell their stories. I say this all the time, but I've worked with, doctors and divorce attorneys and musicians and famous photographers and just so many different people because I'm not like, if you're a 30-year-old, like it's just so, like the idea that you have to talk to an ideal client is very complicated and
Yeah.
it messes with a lot of
And
people's minds.
it reduces people to only data. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's just commerce and not creativity.
Mhm.
We can't separate our work from the creative aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
We're storytellers. There's a thing that I often say, it's exactly what you're talking about, but I talk about it with stories and, relating to somebody with your story. And I say that it's not that they must have experienced what you have experienced, it's that they must have felt what
Mhm.
you have felt. It's the feelings, it's the emotion, not the
Yeah.
actual, events. And
Yeah.
that's precisely what you're talking about. So that's why you can help a doctor, because that's
Mhm.
not what you're serving, right? You're not giving them their medical license.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, when we think about, we talked about this concept of community that you're clearly very skilled at. And you talk about not just telling your story, but selling your story, right?
Mm.
Selling your story to a committed community. Um, Talk to me about the value of that, but also the process in doing that through your story, through storytelling. And we could look at it from the story perspective, but also like the technical perspective, like how you've actually done that with TikTok or with your community, and where you actually drive those people.
Mhm. I think the biggest thing for me is there is a huge difference between just coming on and sitting down and talking about yourself and telling a story. And, coming on and sitting down and telling your story with the idea that you're trying to have something happen. You're trying to sell a product. And I always say this like, I'm a business owner, not an influencer, right? So I'm not trying to just have random stories out there for no reason. I'm a business owner. I need to market myself in a way that grows my business, in a way that, my business is what I want it to be. And so for a very long time when I was creating content on Instagram, early days of TikTok, it was like I was just saying anything and everything to have people find me. And when I finally sat down and I was like, I've had a very successful Facebook group because people came in, they wanted the information that I had. I sold to them every single post because it was no big deal because I provided so much value. They were ready to move on. They were ready to buy whatever, invest in, the content creation services. Um, and so I was like, I'm just going to bring that same idea to TikTok. Everyone that follows me sees me as valuable. Everyone that follows me, wants to be a part of something. They want to gain knowledge. They want to grow. They want to, be able to learn what I have to teach them and what I have to offer them. And then, everyone, I'm going to say everyone, but like most of the people who are receptive to the information that I'm sharing are okay with me selling them whatever they want to be sold to. And again, the way I create my content is like, here's one thing, go focus on one thing, go try to implement it. Most people will go try to implement it, see success, see results, gains that credibility, gains that like respect, comes back, buys. So when I think of selling my story, there's two things that I did really well in my Facebook group. One, obviously, gain the respect of my community because we had those same shared experiences. But two, I asserted myself as, hey, I have a result. I'm going to help you get that result. You don't have to pay for it. Like, I'm going to give you all the content for free. And then if you want, to learn from me one on one or whatever, then you can just go to that. And so I put that on TikTok as well. I'm going to share my shared experiences. That category I would really say is telling your story, right? Because you talk about your past, your experiences, your feelings, your emotions, um, getting the relatability. friendships, all of that, relationships. Marketing is just relationships, building relationships with people, right? So that's the telling your story part. The selling your story, they're really like, I see this person as a leader. I feel like they have it in them, to be able to teach me, to take me to the next level, to um, offer me insights that I don't have. And now they're looking up to me as a leader to then move on to the next step, is how I focus, or how I see selling my story, is transformation, desires, results-based content. And then I use my story. So I talk about, results that I've seen, and then I walk them through how to get it for themselves too.
Does all of your content use a storytelling framework, or do sometimes you just talk about a concept?
Oh, sometimes I just talk about a concept, and sometimes that's that creative, aspect. I call that rogue content, where it's just like, I'm going to say whatever I have to say today and whatever. Like, I'll just have my audience reflect on it. But definitely, the majority of it is building trust, building authority. And I have to do both at the same time, because when we're telling our story too much, we gain a lot of, as I say, friendships, right? We get a lot of friends, people who connect to us, who relate to us. So bringing in that authority, the expertise, the leadership allows for that equal distribution of, yes, I trust you. Yes, I see myself in you, but also I see myself, having your results for myself too. So I do definitely do the same. But rogue content for sure. Like, talk whatever I want to talk about.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I think that storytelling has become such a marketing buzzword now. There's lots of us in the space, and I've been spending more time on LinkedIn this year, and whew, it's wild over there. And you just see the same things repeated over and over. And this, I just had a little epiphany. And I love the way you positioned that. It's like, yeah, some of it's intellectual, some of it's emotional content. You don't have to always tell a story.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the people that are positioning themselves as gurus these days, that are regurgitating the same old tired stuff, it's the same format. Every single post that they do starts with the same line, comes with the second, like, contrasty line, and
Yeah.
then, you know what I mean. And it's just like this. Yeah, that's gonna get old really quick. Like
Hmm.
stories, I always talk about this all the time. You can't just have the tension and the pace of the story, or even the visuals in film, like what I do,
Hmm.
just be monotonous, or you'll lose somebody. So it has to be ups and downs and twists and turns and faster and slower. Variety, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your content, and this is what we're illustrating. However, I bet a lot of people that are trying to be better storytellers subscribe to this philosophy of like, no, everyone's got to be a story. Every post has got to be is got to be a story. And here we have the two storytellers saying, no, it's not actually not true. You can just say, hey, here's a little tip for today.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's like, again, when you're listening to yourself and you know yourself, you're able to listen to what you want to do, and it's no big deal. Like, just do it, because at the end of the day, I know why I'm creating this content, right? So I'm very like psychology oriented. I have a degree in psychology, and like uh talking specifically to people to do a certain thing, not just throwing content, out, and then feeling that like dread, or like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough. And like, it's like, no, you are. And sometimes, I mean, I know for me, like, I just need a little bit of strategy. Like, that's all it is. Like, you can still have fun and still do whatever, you want. Sometimes it's just a little bit of strategy could help you out.
Yeah, I know why I'm doing this. I like that so much, and you don't question yourself when you're really aligned
Mm-mm.
with like, yeah. And even if today doesn't hit, it's like, doesn't matter, because I'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is what people get wrong too. Sorry, I just got excited. It's like, if you're like a major league baseball player and you're stepping up to bat and you strike out, it's like, all right, that sucked, but it's like, I'm in like 30 minutes, I'm going to be back again, right? And it's about how I do this season, right?
Hmm.
Not how or the game at the least, but we don't think about it like you've got a million at bats.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you understand what's my process, what am I focused on, is there something fundamentally wrong? And if not, hey, you just missed that.
Exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
What exactly do you sell now yourself? Is it still just writing people's content? I imagine it's not. It's probably evolved, but that's what you were doing like with the Facebook group. So like,
Mm-hmm.
if I were to be a customer or a client of yours, what are like my options? What do you offer people?
Yeah, so I launched an ebook February of last year, and it's called Sell Your Story. You know, I think that ebook had its moment. We've had like over 800 people go through, and then I really want my brand to be story. So, gosh, but before that, I feel like I was just bouncing all over the place. I was like, I was doing so many different things, and I was like, no, I really need to go into story. And so I had that ebook out for about 10 months, and then I did a class on teaching the psychology behind telling a story and strategy. That was in December. And then in March, 2 months ago, I launched a storytelling content prompts membership because I was like, people they're just really struggling with where to start, how to tell their story, right? So in that membership, I send one email a week. It's 4 different content prompts. And everyone always says, hooks 2 to 3 seconds, hook your audience in.
Hmm.
You have 3 seconds, right? My hooks are like 2 to 3 sentences because I really want people to, one, figure out their freaking communities and gain confidence in themselves, in their story, and then be able to build a business off of it. Like, do whatever. And I have so many incredible people in this membership, labor and delivery coaches and, artists and just everyone who just is so tired of the old way of marketing and you-based marketing. And, all my content is like, I'm just telling my story.
Do you think that I think we may share a perspective or a belief on this? Do you think that anyone, bear with me through that word, could build a business based on who they are and their experiences, like who they are as a person, like off of their story, we can say?
I can say yes and I can say no. I think it really depends on the person
Hmm.
and their you just have to have a business mindset, first of all, right? If you're
Sure.
going to build a business. But I think if you are, and I don't want to say passions included, because you can be passionate about so many
Yeah.
things, right? So you don't necessarily have to be like so diehard passionate about what you're talking about. Again, it's a business, but I've worked with so many people that are like, I want to start a business. I don't know how to market myself. Telling my story feels really good. And so I just want to do that. And so I think, if you had the right mindset going in, if you understood and you were able to learn, the basics of how people buy, sales psychology, speaking to very specific buyers within your storytelling content so that it actually converts and you don't feel like you're just telling your story out to the void for no reason,
Hmm.
then I definitely think it could work. But again, it's that business mindset,
Oh
right?
yeah.
If you don't have, and I don't even think like you need to invest in coaches or invest in help necessarily. I mean, in the beginning, I've invested over $35,000 in coaches, but I haven't had a coach in almost 3 years, and it's when I've seen the most success. So, it's just you learn to trust yourself in this process, and you learn to um, think about the things that you truly want and not what people are telling you should do or what you should want.
Not enough time is spent
I
on exactly
know.
what we're
I
talking
know.
about. Like, this is what people miss. They're looking out there for the answers. And I know this might sound like cliche, but it's like, it's so true. You're looking at what that successful person does or what they tell you how you're supposed to structure your story, yada yada yada. And you just said it, like the more you understand yourself, that's where it all starts.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it gets frustrating because so many people, like, that's the last thing that they do.
I
And I
know.
love that you just showed that. As like, I've worked with coaches for a long time, $35,000, but the most growth is once I finally started understanding, like, yeah, but what do I want to show up? How
Mm-hmm.
do I want to show up? How do I want to help people, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Were there what were the moments of like significant, where you significantly elevated your game? And I'm specifically talking about TikTok. Maybe not your game, but your success, if you will. Like, did you have one or two hits that went viral, or was it like a slow and steady growth in your community that you've built now?
You know, I think there was a point where I was just looking to a lot, and I invested a lot of money into this one person, and I felt very reliant on what they
Mm.
were telling me to that I needed to do to see results, and it wasn't happening. And so, about a year after that investment, I was just finally like, I just need to speak my truth. And I went on to TikTok. I had 1,000 followers at the time. I had one video go viral. And it's when I said I treat my TikTok like my private Facebook group. And then I talked about how I, grow a community. That was January of last year. And that was kind of what popped off for me. And I think I gained like 15,000 followers in 2 months, and it just kind of happened. But it's been happening ever since because I still have that same mindset,
I
right? Like a
love it.
lot of people get sucked into the virality and they can't do anything outside of that, or like they're just looking to recreate the virality every
Mm-hmm.
single day.
Oh,
And at this point, like I don't want to go viral anymore. Like if it happens, it happens, but that's not what I'm looking
did you
for,
make a
right?
post that said that?
Yes, I made a video.
I
It's
think
on
I
my
saw.
pinned TikTok.
Okay, then I definitely saw it when I was
Yeah.
checking out the rest of your stuff, because I remember that line. Like, I don't want to go viral anymore.
Yeah.
I love that you told us the story of like having that little revelation or epiphany of like, I think I'm just going to do what I did at the Facebook group. It worked then, and boy, it gave you the sign very quickly that that was the right move. Last question. We learned a lot about your evolution over the past 10 years. What's your ultimate goal? Like, where are you trying to drive this all next? That's all right. Tell the little youngin' to join us.
Come here.
I got two babies at home too.
You know, I think for me, it's really like, okay, go. It's like, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, I think I'm the type of person that I get so caught up in thinking about the future that
Mm.
I'll stress about, okay, well, how can I maintain this? How can I keep this going? And I think if I've learned anything in the past 4 years, losing my entire community overnight, being 7 months pregnant, having all of a sudden no income. I mean, I had, 6 months of income left, but I would have to then build an entire new community to get my income. It was just like, I can't think about the future anymore. I need to be so present in today. I need to know that what I'm creating today is going to bring people in that want to stay till tomorrow. And I have no idea what I'm going to offer in the future, but like I'll keep it going as long as I can. If my time runs out, it runs out, but I'm just going to have fun while it lasts. It's really
I
like the biggest thing.
I swear, and you don't have to know. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I This is the favorite question and answer, maybe of this whole conversation, and you've delivered every answer. But like, I just love that so much, and it resonates with me personally. So perfect place to end there. What a
Love
great
it.
answer to that question. That isn't like, I want to do this. You're like, I don't know. I'm focusing on today, and you genuinely mean it. I see it in your face. Mackenzie, thank you so much. This was
Thank
incredible.
you. This
I
was
know
so
you got to go
good.
take care of that baby, but sincerely, like, this was amazing. I love the work that you're doing. You're killing it. Keep killing it, and I will be
Thank
supporting you
you.
wholeheartedly.
Thank you so much.